Deal of the century or political fiasco? The United States heads up an economic conference for Palestinians without the Palestinians. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Dubbed the Peace to Prosperity, the Manama Economic Conference is off to a rocky start. Palestinians are boycotting the conference. They say it fails to address the core political issues, the key to ending the long-running Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli side, meanwhile, has been snubbed by the White House. Government officials didn't get an invitation to the event, which begs the question, what progress can be made without either the Palestinians nor the Israelis at the table? Well, there is lots to unpack in the show. I want to bring in Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus. He joins us from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. And Bernard Avishai is a professor of political economy at Dartmouth College and a regular contributor to the New Yorker magazine. He joins us via Skype from Hanover, New Hampshire. Welcome to both of you to the show. Alan Dershowitz, let me start with you. The United States has presented this economic plan for the Palestinians. It calls for, among other things, tens of billions of dollars of investment. But this is how the Palestinian Prime Minister, Mohammed Shataya, responded to it. Let's listen.
We have realized that this economic workshop in Bahrain is going to be really of nonsense. It's just simply a theoretical piece of work calling for $60 billion. We don't know where this money is going to come from. But we know that the economic problem in Palestine has to do with all the Israeli measures. I have not seen in the document any reference to occupation. I have not seen in the document any reference to settlements. We have not seen in the document any reference to ending occupation. This workshop is simply a political laundry for settlements and a legitimization of occupation.
So, Alan Dershowitz, given that that is the Palestinian response to this conference, what's the point of it? What's going to be achieved here?
Well, the Palestinian response has been the same since 1938, when they rejected statehood proposal under the Peel Commission. The same in 1948, when they rejected statehood under the UN partition plan. The same in 2000-2001, when they rejected a Clinton-Barack plan for statehood. The same in 2008, when they rejected Olmert's plan for statehood. The Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. The Prime Minister is simply distorting the purpose of this plan. This is a first step. Obviously, issues of the occupation, issues of territorial adjustments will be dealt with in the second stage. There's no reason why the Palestinians shouldn't come and listen. If they have something to offer, they can. They can come to this conference without any kind of commitment. It's simply another rejectionist move. The Palestinians will never get a state unless they sit down and negotiate and make painful compromises along with Israel. And that's what has to happen. And this idea of just rejecting everything, which has happened now for more than 80 years, is simply not going to result in the two-state solution that I think would benefit both parties.
But Alan Dershowitz, what about the Prime Minister's point that let's get the political issues out of the way first, then an economic conference, then this kind of investment would make a lot more sense?
Well, the Palestinians don't get to dictate the terms. They don't get to dictate the order. They don't get to dictate anything. They have created this problem for themselves. Their own Prime Minister Abbas said it was a terrible mistake in 1948 to not accept the statehood proposal. They lost every war. The Jordanians attacked Israel. That's what resulted in the occupation. This is, as Abba Eban once put it, the first time that the winners have petitioned for peace and the losers want unconditional surrender. The Palestinians have to understand their position. They don't have widespread support today among the Sunni Arab nations. They should accept the proposals, come forward and at least listen, offer counter proposals. But the idea of simply rejecting has gotten them nowhere. It may have gotten their leaders somewhere. Their leaders run a kleptocratic regime, but the people have suffered. The people have suffered by being put in refugee camps. The people have suffered from day one for some ideology, the destruction of Israel, that will never happen.
Right. Bernard Avishai, do you agree with Alan Dershowitz's point there that the Palestinians don't have a right to dictate anything yet, despite this is a conference about their future?
Well, I'm not sure serves us to go back to 1938. The Palestinians are in a spot. Obviously, they would like to see economic progress. And it's easy to get into a mindset where we think, well, we're going to throw $50 billion at you. What's your problem? We will have economic progress. Why not defer the political issues which may lead you down a path to dignity later on? And I think that what's being missed here is that political issues are fundamental to economic progress. When Mohammed Shtaya talks about the problems of occupation, he's talking about the obstacles to economic progress. I've looked at the Kushner plan very, very carefully. And just to be clear, I think it's great to focus on regional solutions. I think it's great to think about ways of breaking down barriers. I've written myself for 25 years that if we're going to have a two-state solution, it's going to look more confederal than the kind of partition that Alan was talking about from 1938 or 47. But that doesn't mean you come with something you call a plan, but it's just really a wish list, and ignores all the obstacles to making an economic reality possible. Too much of this plan just sounds like, the first year ideas of a Deloitte consultant. There's just nothing here that's serious about the obstacles to making economic progress happen. And the most important, for example, is the focus on capital markets. Palestine doesn't lack money. Palestine lacks an entrepreneurial environment in which to put money to work. The banking system in Palestine has about $13 billion, but they can't find investable business plans. There's already a venture capital fund working in Palestine that can't find investable business plans because the kinds of businesses that would grow from those investments require the kind of freedom that make entrepreneurship possible.
Alan Dershowitz, what about Bernard Avishai's point there that you can't have investment, you can't have economic progress in a place where the political situation undermines that development, like the occupation, like the fact that there's a blockade on Gaza?
There is no occupation in Ramallah. You go to Ramallah, you see a thriving, beautiful city with a very high gross national product. You never see an Israeli soldier. You never see an Israeli policeman. There are investment firms. I know one of my students runs one that has investments only with Israeli and Palestinians jointly investing. Ramallah is the Palestinian city. It is a model for what a Palestinian state can look like. Look, let's face reality. You can't have the political come before the economic right now. There is no Israeli government. The Israeli government will only be formed after the new election in September. So the real question is whether you put off everything until the new Israeli government is formed, or at least begin with an economic plan that can be studied carefully. I suspect that if the people of the Palestinian areas, particularly in the West Bank, but also in the Gaza, were to study this plan and say to themselves, gee, this really might help us. It might help our children. It provides for education. It provides for health care. I think they might actually tell their leaders, why don't you at least sit down and consider it and negotiate? Nobody's asking you to accept anything at this point. Just listen and participate. But the idea of not even showing up and expecting a state through some BDS movement or UN resolutions or academics in Cambridge arguing about a state is not going to happen. The Palestinians have to participate, they have to negotiate, and they haven't ever done that. And when they have done it, they've always said, no, no, no. You don't have to go back to 1938, just go back to 2008, where Olmert offered the Palestinians 96% of the West Bank, 100% of the Gaza had already been turned over. Look what happened to the Gaza.
Yeah.
When Sharon turned the Gaza completely over to the Palestinians, and before Hamas took over, there was an opportunity to turn the Gaza into Singapore and the Mediterranean. Instead, they took all the money they got and used it to build terror tunnels and terror rockets.
Bernard, Avishai, I just wanted to respond to some of the things Alan Dershowitz said there. A, there is no occupation. B, the Palestinians have refused
I didn't say there was no occupation. I said there was no occupation of Ramallah. Let's be clear. Don't mischaracterize my views, please.
Okay.
If we want to go to 2008, I actually wrote about this in the New York Times. I interviewed Ehud Olmert, who's a very close friend of mine, and Abbas the same day. And I spoke to both about whether or not they came close to an agreement. Ehud Olmert has said numerous times that Abbas never said no to his agreement. What really happened was much more complicated than that, and it had to do with the fact that Tzipi Livni, who was coming in to replace Olmert, had advised Abbas to wait until she was prime minister to negotiate with her. That became a very complicated thing, but Olmert never said no. Olmert said that Abbas never said no. And they came extremely close and could again. Once Netanyahu's government came in, all bets were off. Abbas went to Netanyahu and said, I want to continue negotiating with you on the issues where Olmert and I left off. And Netanyahu said, no way. And we've had this for now 10 years, spinning our wheels. As far as Ramallah is concerned, Ramallah is one city in the middle of a business ecosystem. The idea that it's thriving is really preposterous. Ramallah has a great deal of investment in building. There's a real estate bubble there, that's true. But there's also a tremendous amount of difficulty, even in setting up supermarkets, because in order to have supermarkets, you have to have a logistics system, you have to have an open transportation corridor between cities. And it's the problem is trying to move through the areas where the Israelis have settlements. No Palestinian business person would dream of telling you that Ramallah is thriving, or that you can set up businesses in the Palestinian territories without creating the freedoms that allow entrepreneurs to move around, to bring talent into the area. Money is the last of their problems. The problem is the constraints on their movement, the constraints on their right to bring in people and get residency. And I could go on, but I'm sure you have better questions.
In fact, we have come to the end of this segment. We've run out of time. Thanks to both of you for being with us. We want to take a short break right now. More of our conversation when we return. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.